You spend your life running from the very thing that holds your freedom. You avoid the mirror because you are afraid of what stares back. You bury your anger, your envy, your weakness, your shame, pretending they do not exist, covering them with masks of politeness, ambition, and forced smiles. Yet the more you suppress, the more you fracture. And deep inside you feel it, the gnawing truth that the darkness you deny is the very key to the light you seek. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of yourself you exile, repress, and reject. The impulses you are ashamed of, the desires you judge, the wounds you hide. You think by ignoring them you are protecting yourself, but in reality, you are splitting yourself in half. You are creating an enemy inside your own soul, an enemy that grows in silence until it dominates you from the shadows. The shadow does not vanish because you deny it. It grows stronger. It becomes projection, the hatred you spew onto others for traits you secretly fear in yourself. It becomes sabotage, the silent hand that ruins your progress before you can taste success. It becomes fear, the whisper that convinces you to stay small, safe, invisible. The shadow is not evil. It is simply unlived life. It is the raw energy of your wholeness, trapped in the dark because you were too afraid to look at it. You want power, you want freedom, you want a mind so strong no one can break it. Then you must stop running. You must turn toward the shadow. You must descend into the underworld of your own psyche, like Orpheus entering Hades, like Dante walking through the Inferno, like every mythic hero who first descends before he rises. Because here is the law. There is no ascent without descent. There is no light without shadow. There is no awakening without confrontation. If you refuse a descent, you live half a life. You become hollow, brittle, fragile. But if you dare to walk into your darkness, if you dare to see the parts of yourself you have feared and rejected, you do not become darker. You become whole, and wholeness is unbreakable. Nietzsche once said, "One must have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." The shadow is that chaos, and if you keep repressing it, your star never ignites. You remain trapped, enslaved by hidden patterns. But if you learn to embrace it, to integrate it, to wield it, then your chaos becomes creation, and your darkness becomes the foundation of your light. Think of history. The most terrifying tyrants were not men who embraced their darkness. They were men who denied it, projected it outward, and unleashed it upon the world. Hitler's hatred was his shadow made global. Stalin's paranoia was his shadow weaponized. They refused to confront the monster inside, and so the monster consumed entire nations. But the greatest leaders, the rare few who transcended, they were men and women who faced their darkness first. They wrestled with their demons, they embraced their shadow, and that is why their light had weight, why their words carried truth, why their presence could move history. So ask yourself, what have you buried? What truths are you hiding? What emotions do you shame yourself for? What drives you in secret while you pretend to be someone else? The shadow waits. And until you turn toward it, you will remain divided, weak, at war with yourself. But when you embrace it, when you bring it into consciousness, something extraordinary happens. The energy you wasted suppressing yourself becomes fuel. The anger you denied becomes strength. The envy you repressed becomes vision. The fear you buried becomes courage. The darkness you once feared becomes the foundation upon which you build your light. This is not philosophy. This is war. Because shadow work is not gentle. It is not comfortable. It will rip you open, force you to confront your lies, shatter your illusions of who you think you are. But it is the only path to becoming whole. Cyphoria, the ecstasy of psychological rebirth, only comes when you walk into the abyss and discover that it cannot consume you. That the monster you feared was only a part of yourself asking to be seen, to be understood, to be integrated. Most people will never do this. They will live their entire lives possessed by shadows they never confront. They will project, blame, hate, and sabotage until they die, never knowing that the enemy was inside. They will call it fate. But Jung was right. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But you who hear these words, you have a choice. You can keep running, or you can turn and face it. You can keep denying, or you can embrace. You can keep fragmenting, or you can integrate and rise. Belief begins here, the belief that you are strong enough to face yourself. Because the greatest act of courage is not standing against the world, it is standing against your own shadow. And belief is not blind optimism. Belief is the recognition that inside your darkness lies everything you need to rise. Clarity follows, because once you stop lying to yourself, once you stop denying what is within you, the fog lifts. You begin to see your patterns for what they are. You see how your shadow has ruled your relationships, your work, your self-image. And in that clarity, you can finally choose. Vision emerges, not the shallow vision of ego, but the deeper vision of the soul, the vision of who you could become if you stop betraying yourself, the vision of wholeness, of authenticity, of a self so integrated that no projection, no sabotage, no enemy could fracture it. Purpose ignites, because when you confront your shadow, you stop living for approval, for validation, for external masks. You begin to live for something deeper, something eternal, the integration of your full self, the birth of your true being. Discipline anchors it, because shadow work is not a one-time act. It is a lifelong practice. The shadow evolves, and you must meet it again and again with courage and honesty. Discipline is what prevents you from falling back into denial, from numbing yourself with comfort, from slipping into the sleep of repression. Action solidifies it, because self-confrontation without transformation is wasted. You must not only see your shadow, you must wield it. You must take the energy it held hostage and redirect it into creation, into growth, into the pursuit of your destiny. Gratitude protects it, because the shadow is not your enemy, it is a teacher. Every wound, every fear, every flaw you discover is an invitation to grow. Gratitude transforms confrontation into integration, pain into power, darkness into light. Adaptability ensures survival, because the shadow shifts. It changes form. What you integrate today may return tomorrow in another disguise. But adaptability keeps you awake, fluid, aware. It ensures you are never possessed by the very thing you thought you had conquered. Resilience keeps you moving, because shadow work is not pretty. It is brutal. It will break you before it remakes you. You will stumble, fall, collapse under the weight of your own unconscious. But resilience is the refusal to stay down, the refusal to surrender to darkness, the refusal to let the shadow rule you again. And learning sharpens it, because the deeper you go, the more you realize the shadow is endless. The psyche is vast, infinite, layered beyond comprehension. To stop learning is to stop evolving. But to keep learning is to keep rising, to keep integrating, to keep becoming. And when all of this converges, when belief, clarity, vision, purpose, discipline, action, gratitude, adaptability, resilience, and learning weave together into one, then the shadow is no longer your jailer. It becomes your ally. It becomes your strength. It becomes the dark soil from which the brightest light grows. This is the path Jung pointed to. This is the descent and the ascent. This is the work of a lifetime. To embrace the dark in order to find the light. To stop running, to turn, to phase, to integrate, to rise. And when you do, you will discover a freedom so vast, so unshakable, that nothing outside of you can touch it. Not rejection, not betrayal, not even death. Because once you embrace your shadow, you are no longer fragmented. You are whole, and wholeness is immortal. So the question remains, will you keep hiding from your shadow, or will you step into the abyss knowing that the only way to the light is through the dark? The choice is yours. The shadow waits, and the light is already inside you. The shadow is not an intruder. It is not an enemy from the outside. It is your twin, the half of you that was never given permission to exist. From childhood, you were told what was acceptable. Be polite, be obedient, be humble, be safe. And everything else, the rage, the wildness, the lust, the ambition, the hunger, the pride, you pushed it down because you were taught it was dangerous. You buried it in silence. But buried does not mean gone. What you repress does not die. It mutates. The shadow becomes cunning. It hides in your dreams. It seeps out in moments of rage you cannot explain. It leaks into your relationships, sabotaging them with jealousy, manipulation, resentment. It whispers in your failures, you are not worthy. You are not enough. And here lies the great paradox. The more you deny your shadow, the more power it gains. The more you pretend it does not exist, the more it rules you. Like a tyrant you refuse to overthrow, it takes the throne of your psyche and commands you from the dark. This is why your life repeats in cycles. The same arguments, the same heartbreaks, the same failures. You think fate is against you. You think the world is cruel. But in truth, it is your unconscious steering the ship, and you are its hostage. But Jung showed us the way. Make the unconscious conscious. Drag the shadow into the light. Not to destroy it, but to integrate it. Because inside the shadow lies not only your wounds, but also your gifts. The parts of you that were too powerful, too dangerous, too alive for the small world you grew up in. Look at myth. The dragon always guards the treasure. The monster always stands before the gold. The shadow is the dragon of your psyche, terrifying but necessary. If you run from it, you remain poor, empty, fragmented. But if you confront it, if you face it, if you wrestle it, you win the treasure of yourself. Do you know why people envy? Because envy reveals what their shadow hides. When you envy another's strength, it is because you buried your own. When you envy their beauty, it is because you denied your own. When you envy their power, it is because you feared your own ambition. Envy is not a curse. It is a compass pointing directly toward the shadow you must reclaim. Anger is the same. Anger is shadow fire. Left unexamined, it becomes destruction, violence, bitterness, cruelty. But when embraced, anger is clarity. It tells you where your boundaries were crossed, where injustice burns, where your soul demands change. Suppress it, and it poisons you. Integrate it, and it becomes fuel. Even fear belongs to the shadow. You fear not because you are weak, but because your soul points you toward growth and your ego resists. Fear is the shadow saying, here is the edge. Step through it. Ignore it, and you shrink. Face it, and you expand. The world teaches you to be only light, only kind, only positive. That is a lie. That is a half-life. True wholeness is not found in pretending away your darkness. It is found in owning it. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That is the work, to descend willingly into the abyss of yourself, to look at your ugliest truth without turning away, to hold your shame, your guilt, your lust, your greed, your rage, and say, you are mine, you belong to me, and I will not be ruled by you, I will master you. And mastery is born not in denial, but in integration. The warrior who denies fear is reckless. The warrior who embraces fear is prepared. The leader who denies anger is passive. The leader who channels anger becomes a force of justice. The lover who denies desire is cold. The lover who embraces desire with awareness burns with passion without being consumed. This is why shadow work is not for the weak. It is not for those who want comfort, who want safety, who want shallow happiness. It is for those who want truth, power, wholeness. Because to confront the shadow is to confront God and devil within the same skin, and to walk out not as half a human, but as a complete one. Do you wonder why your confidence crumbles? Why your relationships collapse? Why your goals dissolve before you reach them? It is not because you are doomed. It is because your shadow is running the show and you refuse to claim it. You sabotage yourself because you live in fragments. But fragments cannot hold weight. Only wholeness can. Think of the alchemists of old. They spoke of turning lead into gold. But this was never about metal. It was about the psyche. The lead is your shadow, heavy and dark. The gold is your integrated self, radiant, strong, indestructible. The alchemical fire is the confrontation, the courage to face yourself fully. And the philosopher's stone is wholeness, the eternal light born from embracing the eternal dark. But you must choose. You can keep playing the victim of your unconscious, or you can claim the throne of your mind. You can keep projecting your shadow onto the world, or you can own it and stop blaming others for what is inside you. You can keep repressing your darkness until it poisons you, or you can drink it consciously and be transformed. The path is brutal. It will strip you bare. It will demand that you admit you are not only the hero of your story, but also the villain. It will demand that you see the parts of yourself capable of cruelty, of betrayal, of destruction, but in seeing them, you rob them of power. What is unconscious rules you. What is conscious can be mastered. And mastery of the shadow is mastery of life itself. Because once you know your darkness, no one can use it against you. Once you embrace your flaws, no insult can wound you. Once you integrate your rage, no manipulation can control you. Once you own your fear, no obstacle can stop you. This is true freedom, not the shallow freedom of doing whatever you want, but the deep freedom of being whole, untouchable, unshakable, unstoppable. So ask yourself, will you keep running, or will you face the mirror? Will you keep living as half a self, or will you embrace your shadow and rise as a whole being? The choice is the difference between sleep and awakening, between slavery and freedom, between fragmentation and wholeness. The abyss waits, the shadow waits, the treasure waits. The question is, do you? The human spirit has always feared its own depths. We have built religions, governments, and entire cultures to protect us from ourselves. We outlawed certain desires. We called certain impulses sin. We branded certain emotions weakness. We told ourselves we were civilized because we tamed our instincts. But what we really did was bury them alive. And the earth does not forget what it swallows. Every saint carried a shadow. Every philosopher wrestled with demons. Every king who wore a crown also heard the whisper of destruction in his ear. But the difference between those who became immortal in history and those who vanished into decay was simple. The great ones confronted what the rest denied. Alexander the Great was not great because he conquered Persia. He was great because he conquered himself first. His enemies could not break him because he had already faced his own shadow, his temper, his lust, his hunger for glory. Did it consume him eventually? Yes. But only after it carried him across the edges of the known world. He shows us the price of wielding shadow without balance. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, sat at the edge of empire with armies at war and enemies at his gates. And what did he write to himself in the silence of his tent? Not strategies of conquest, not boasts of power, but reminders to master his own anger, his own grief, his own shadow. That was his war, and that is why he is remembered not as a tyrant, but as a sage. And what of you? Do you imagine you are any different? Your empire may not stretch across continents, but you are still sovereign of a kingdom, your own mind. And every day your shadow challenges you for the throne. Do you notice, or do you surrender without a fight? Shadow work is not therapy. It is not self-help. It is initiation. It is a rite of passage as old as humanity. Every ancient culture had its descent. The shamans who faced the underworld, the heroes who fought monsters in caves, the prophets who wandered into the desert to wrestle with God. They understood what modern people have forgotten. The only way to the divine is through the dark. And yet, In our age of endless distraction, no one descends. We drown the shadow in entertainment, in dopamine, in false light that blinds us to the real one. We scroll and consume and medicate, hoping never to hear the whisper of the unconscious, and in doing so, we become weaker than any generation before us. Outwardly advanced, inwardly broken, surrounded by machines but slaves to our own unexamined minds. Jung warned us of this. He saw modernity breeding fragile souls, terrified of silence, because in silence the shadow speaks. He knew that without inner confrontation, humanity would turn outward, projecting its shadow on a global scale. Wars, genocides, tyrannies, all of them collective shadows erupting because individuals refuse to face their own. And so the work is not optional. If you wish to be free, if you wish to be whole, if you wish to be alive in the fullest sense, you must descend. You must face what others run from. You must sit with your rage until it burns clean. You must face your envy until it becomes inspiration. You must confront your lust until it becomes creation. You must meet your fear until it becomes courage. This is the path of alchemy. This is the transformation of lead into gold, of shadow into light. Not by erasing the darkness, but by embracing it until it serves you rather than enslaves you. Do you know what real power is? It is not dominance over others. It is not wealth, not status, not control. Real power is mastery of the shadow. Because the man who has faced his shadow cannot be manipulated, he cannot be blackmailed with his own secrets, he cannot be shamed with his own flaws, he has already embraced them. He has already said, yes, this is me, and I am still whole. The world cannot break the man who is whole. But wholeness requires discipline. This is why so many fail. They begin the descent, they glimpse their shadow, they feel the discomfort, and they run back into the arms of denial. They sabotage the process because they are addicted to comfort. But shadow work is not comfort. It is fire. It is trial by flame. It demands resilience because the shadow will test you again and again in new forms, in new disguises. You will think you have conquered it, and then it will appear in a new lover, a new enemy, a new failure. It will rise in dreams, in rage, in envy you thought was gone, and you will realize the shadow is eternal. You do not kill it. You walk with it. You do not banish it. You make it your companion. Resilience is the armor you wear on this path, because the shadow will strike where you are weakest. It will show you truths you do not want to see. It will bring you to your knees. But resilience is the refusal to surrender. It is the knowing that every descent has a purpose, that every confrontation is another step toward wholeness, that every fall is a chance to rise stronger. Think of Nelson Mandela, locked in a cell for 27 years. Most men would have been broken, consumed by hatred, by the shadow of bitterness. But Mandela faced it. He sat with it. He integrated it. And when he emerged, he did not carry vengeance. He carried vision. That is shadow work in its highest form, turning darkness into light, not by denial, but by mastery. And what is mastery? It is not control in the sense of suppression. It is harmony. To master the shadow is to know it, to respect it, to hear it without obeying it. To say, I see you, I know you, you are mine, but I choose the higher road. That is the summit, to embrace the dark, to find the light, to know yourself so deeply that nothing can divide you, to walk through the world unbroken because you have already walked through your own hell. So I ask you again, will you keep hiding behind your masks? Or will you burn them away and face yourself? Will you keep running from the dragon? Or will you fight it and claim the treasure? Will you keep living half a life? Or will you descend into your shadow and rise whole? The world does not need more masks. The world needs whole beings, beings who have faced their shadow and found their light, beings who are unafraid, unshakable, unbreakable. And that can be you if you dare. The abyss calls, the shadow waits, and your light has been waiting too. The shadow is not a curse. It is not a flaw, it is the doorway. Every moment you rejected yourself, every impulse you shamed, every wound you buried, all of it was preparing you for this truth. The goal you seek is hidden in the darkness you fear. You have been taught to hate your shadow, to suppress it, to run from it. But what you run from owns you. What you face transforms you. The shadow was never your enemy, it was your mirror. And only when you face it, when you embrace it, do you finally see yourself whole. Light without darkness is fragile, blind, shallow. Darkness without light is chaos, destruction, despair. But together, when the two are united, they create something indestructible, wholeness. The self, Carl Jung knew this. The task of life is not perfection. The task is integration. To gather every piece of yourself, even the ones you hate, and weave them into one. To descend into the underworld of your soul and rise with the treasure of your wholeness. And this is the final truth. You are not here to be only light. You are not here to be only shadow. You are here to become both, to become the bridge, the harmony, the totality. Because once you embrace the dark, the light is no longer fragile. Once you embrace the shadow, the self is no longer divided. Once you embrace all of you, nothing outside can break you. Not rejection, not failure, not betrayal, not fear. This is why the hero's journey always ends in return. The return not with perfection, but with integration. The hero descends, confronts the dragon, claims the treasure, and comes back whole. That is your path, that is your work, that is your destiny. So stop running, stop hiding, stop pretending, step into the abyss, face the shadow, embrace the dark, and you will find the light that has been waiting for you all along. The masks fall, the fragments fuse, the war ends, and what remains is not a broken self, not a half self, not a shadow self, but you, the whole you, the true you, the light born of darkness. And in that moment, you will know you were never lost, you were only incomplete. And now you are whole.